Welcome to Cheongju, South Korea. Sorry, I almost said Daegu, South Korea. That's not correct. Cheongju, South Korea. We are at Chungbuk University, which is one of the pioneers in historical Korean clothing, conservation, and study. And they have a special exhibit on the tomb finds from one very amazing lady who lived and died at the end of the 17th and early 18th century. And we're going to now go take a look at the clothing that was found in her tomb. You might see behind me this stunning piece, which is reflective of historic lines, but has been modernized. This is a Wansam, which was originally a ceremonial garment reserved only for the aristocracy and the royalty of Korea for ceremonial purposes. But later on, at the end of the Joseon dynasty, all women were permitted to wear it on their wedding day, but this is a modern take on a classic. And that is the second part of this exhibit that will be coming in July, when you will see on display modern but historically inspired Hanbok designs. So right now we're focusing on the historical originals. So Lady Cheong Shim. Unfortunately, like many women in the Joseon era, we don't know her first name. We only know her clan name and where her clan was located. So Cheong. Welcome to the Joseon dynasty. In her tomb was found 83 garments wrapped around her body. Remember, part of the Joseon dynasty's method of burial was to wrap a corpse, dress a corpse in almost every garment they owned, and if there was still room, to put additional garments in and additional fabric in. And that's one of the reasons these garments, starting in the 16th century and going forward, survive so well. So this lady's tomb, unfortunately, was stumbled across by a construction crew, and they just opened the tomb willy-nilly. They took her coffin out of the ground, and then they opened the coffin and started taking the pieces out like it was no one's business. It was apparently excavated in 2003, and as far as we can tell, this 9-minute, 45-second video is a how to not excavate ever anything, no matter what. The damage they did to her clothing is despicable. Also, if you're just joining us, welcome to South Korea. Don't forget to double tap that screen and consider subscribing. And if you have questions at any point, pop them in the live stream. So here we get to one of the first garments they opened from, it's huge, right? This stunning silk damask garment is called a Wansam. And it was a ceremonial garment, but apparently there was about 2 times a month on average where this beautiful baby would come out to play. And ceremonial doesn't mean that it was just worn for a few minutes and then changed out of. No, it would probably have been worn for the whole day. Feasting would have happened in it. Performances would have been watched in it. So this actually probably saw more use than your average evening gown would these days. Now, some interesting things to note: the writing, the gold leaf writing, the kumbak. Yeah, so when this was taken out of the grave, it was brand new and it shone so brightly in the sunlight. But the assholes who destructively did this so-called excavation held it up and shook it and folded it and tossed it in a plastic box to take to a museum, and all the gold leaf came off. So now all you can see is the adhesive, which according to Dr. Kim Min-ji would have been fish glue. And those letters, there's 2 sets of letters there. On the top, you have the Chinese character Su, which is the character for longevity. And you also see the little four-armed design. I'm not going to say its name lest this channel will get banned. That's a Buddhist symbol, everyone. The Buddhists had it first. And then on the lower row, we have the character Bok, which is good luck. And Minji and I are pretty certain that those kumbak, those gold stamped letters were added post-mortem specifically for the burial. Also, she has at the center of her chest, there is a hyongbae, which is a badge, normally it would be a rank badge. But if you look at the excavation, this had gold leaf on it too when it came out of the grave, and it's barely sewn on, and it was just pinned to the other side. So we also theorize that this was added post-mortem as part of the funerary preparations. And here they actually show, I'm pretty certain, a not very accurate representation of how it may have looked before all the color leached out of it. I say a not accurate representation because I have looked at this thing in detail, and the inner band of fabric is not a different fabric from the shell. It's the shell continued and folded over. I'll be posting a whole bunch of videos for my members and patrons where I go into deep detail about each of these garments. So yeah, if you would like access to that, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Right, okay, so she was buried with about 23 jogori. That is the name of this garment. Some people call it a jacket or a bolero. It basically functioned like a shirt, though, in certain ways. This is a reconstruction of this one. So this is the one from the tomb, which for 300-plus-year-old garment is looking pretty damn good, especially considering the way those jackasses mishandled it. And they think that the brown pieces, now that are brown, were once this beautiful shade of mauve, this beautiful purple. Are you having to ban someone? No. Were once this, right, were once this beautiful shade of mauve, and they think that the body of the garment was actually this shade of green because we see this in contemporary depictions of women. Written by a lady to her husband requesting that he purchase from the market a green jogori. So that is why they've gone with green in this particular one. I'm going to look at the excavation report. The signs here didn't say whether they've actually done any sort of dye analysis to verify, or if this is just supposition based on other garments, right? But this style, you might, for those of you who are familiar with modern Korean clothing, might think, wow, that's really long in the waist. This is the historical line at the end of the 17th and 18th century, and it's not until the end of the 18th century that they start getting really short, right? But what you can see here is a garment that is bag-lined in a silk twill, and it's made out of this really beautiful silk damask. And if you look closely, you can see little squirrels in this one. There's little squirrels. They're very small compared to the grapes. There's little squirrels all over the place. It's so adorable.
Right there.
Right, but the grapevine motif is a very common motif in this era, and these fabrics could have well been woven in Korea at this time. This was before the weaving of beautiful fabrics like this was banned, and Korea started its sharp decline into obscurity. Okay, over here we have two garments that are called Jangot, which literally means long coat, and they're actually, one is much more voluminous than the other, and Minji theorizes that this was actually designed to be worn under that one. Here in Korea in the late 17th, early 18th century, just as in Europe, it is the Little Ice Age. Things are getting colder, and so they're wearing more and more layers, and they're starting to actually do padding and quilting as well. So what's interesting about both of these garments is a technicality of tailoring. And you won't really be able to see it, but I'll just say it for those who know, the side panels that create the width are actually cut so that the straight grain line is the outer edge, and the line that's actually cut diagonally across the fabric is the seam that's attached to the body, which means you have a bias cut edge attached to a straight grain cut edge, and that's what helps create this beautiful folding naturally. More than just the fullness, it's more complicated and sophisticated than that. These are geometric construction. You can see there are small little gores, little gussets in the armpit, and they're a different color. Again, they think these were mauve. I've not seen anything about what they theorize the color of this particular jangot to be, but this was a very colorful era, and dark saturated colors were very popular as well. Yes, if you have any questions or you'd like to see something more closely, please pop them in the live chat. Also double tap that screen if you're enjoying. Right, okay, so do these next, okay. Okay, so as I said, there were 23 dolgori found in Lady Tongson's tomb.
Hi, user. GHTAD.
Hi, user. I'm sorry, your name is showing up as user with a string of letters and numbers. So thank you for joining us. If you have any questions about any of these amazing late 17th, early 18th century garments, let us know. So, and also if you'd like to go back and look at the horror story that is the excavation, they have a video playing showing everything you shouldn't do when you excavate. We'll be happy to share it with you.
Surajit,
Surajit.
I think, is their name.
Okay, Surajit, got it. Okay, Surajit, welcome, thank you for joining us. So all of these dolgori were found either on Lady Tongsong's body or in her tomb, basically packed in her coffin, packed in with her body. And they all reflect a very similar style, but some of them are constructed differently than others. So here on the lower panel, it's basically the floor, but it's not the floor, are a style of dolgori that does not have separate side gussets that are a different color or fabric than the main. And it's amazing how they still shine after all of these centuries, despite having been dumped on the dirty forest floor when they were excavated. Don't get me started.
EGOT says hi.
EGOT, welcome, thank you for joining us. If you want to look at anything more closely, just let us know and we will make that happen.
Where are you from?
We are currently in South Korea, but I'm originally from the great state of Delaware in the US. But we are currently, welcome to Chungbuk University, kind of in the center of South Korea. It's a beautiful campus and they have this amazing little university museum and this stunning exhibit of this lady's amazing clothing. Right.
Really is, the patterns are...
Yeah, so the quality of the weaves, the number of garments that she had is a sign of just how well off she was. But even then, if you look at the sleeve of this dolgori here in front, you can see that pieces of fabric were seamed together to make the fabric long enough or wide enough for the shape they needed. So I actually have a theory, because we see these same fabrics being repeated again and again and again. Some of these dolgori were made from the leftover bits from stunning garments like that one. Right, so this is the second Wansam that was found in her tomb. And it would be hard to believe that this garment is more than 300 years old, but it is.
They like your Hanbok.
Oh, thank you. I enjoy Hanbok is the way to go. And that's one of the reasons we're here, so I can learn more techniques and get more inspiration for making more beautiful Korean garments. Oh, Gelbeline, welcome back. Thank you for joining us, my dear. If you have any questions, let us know.
You got some wow. Yeah, this is a stunning piece.
It's a stunning piece, is it not?
Yeah,
There's glass there, right? Human for scale, Contessa for scale. Right, but this garment, as this Wansam, is a ceremonial garment, which meant that it was like an evening gown. It was like the equivalent of the Joseon equivalent of an evening gown. Men and women had their own versions of evening gowns in this era. But for the average aristocrat, this garment would have come out on average twice a month. So it actually would have seen quite a bit of use. And ceremonial use doesn't mean that you just wear it for the ancestral rites and then take it off. Usually there would be feasting and performances and a whole host of activities that filled the entire day. So this garment would get worn for most of the day. Now, this hyunbae, this patch here, let's look closely at this patch. That beautiful, what would normally be a rank badge, but it's not a rank badge. First off, that is couched gold work. So that is gold thread. And it is so densely packed that it creates its own topography. And when it came out of the tomb, it was as bright as the sun, But because they abused it so badly, it started tarnishing almost immediately because they just opened up this poor lady's coffin in the middle of the forest at a construction site and just took all of the garments out willy-nilly and tossed them on the floor. Forest floor, no tarp, mind you. And then they just folded them up after they looked at each of them and tossed them in a plastic bucket. No, I'm not making any of this up. We can show you, and we will show you. Because they filmed the whole process, so we can see how they abused these 300-year-old garments as they came out of the tomb. One of the reasons I mention this is not just to whinge about the horrors of bad archaeology, but also because when this hyunbae, when this patch came out of the tomb, it was bright, shiny. Basically, it was made for the grave. This was not a patch that she wore in life. This was made for her funeral, for her in the afterlife. And one of the reasons we know that is because the character that is embroidered in beautiful gold work is the Chinese character for Su, which is longevity. And that's just a little on the nose, you know. And also above Su are, you know, the Buddhist, I'm trying to think of a word that won't get this channel banned. Symbol, the Buddhist symbol. The Buddhists had it first for literally millennia before. Oh, good, great, okay, good. Then we won't get banned. But all of it is couch work. It is all couched, whether it's gold or it's silk. It is, but it's very unusual. It's not sewn on at all. It's basically tacked down on one side, and then it was just laid over her body and then belted. And here you can see this belt, which when it came out of her coffin was bright and shiny with gold leaf. And as you can see, almost all the gold leaf has since come off because they just picked it out of her coffin in the middle of the forest and bunched it up and tossed it in a bucket with a bunch of other clothes, and all the gold leaf came off. Oh, so wonderful. Reptiles, welcome. It's been a long time, my dear. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. So this belt would have been worn with this wansam at the waist because it would have been belted. So even though it already does have this beautiful, sexy curvature, it would have had an additional sash, and that sash has a very elaborate, stunning knot. That's why it needs to be so long, not because people were huge. They definitely were not in late 17th century Joseon, but because there's this very elaborate knot that would be done in the back on someone who would have been living. And that little strap there, that extra strap, that would have been for tying to a strap on the wansam around the waist so that the belt would stay in place, right? Yeah. The sleeves are very interesting one because they're huge, as some of you have noted, but they're also made of 4 different fabrics, sort of. So you've got the beautiful lotus motif there, the lotus form as it's officially referred to in some of the literature. And then you've got this narrow band that is also the lotus form, but it's basically the reverse side of this fabric. And then we've got this band of gold brocade, and that gold is real gold thread, which is tarnished with time because it wasn't pure gold. It was probably gilt silver, actually. And then you've got this gorgeous, intricate band at the very edge of a very unique fabric that Minji and I have never seen in any other garment from this era. So it could be that this lady, who was, by the way, a princess's granddaughter and had connections, direct contact with her princess grandmother. It could be that she had access to fabrics being imported from very exotic places that other people didn't have.
Reptiles has a really good question.
Yes, reptiles. No, not here anyway. So in the Joseon, it's a great question. Jewelry, was any jewelry preserved? I don't know if any jewelry was found in the tomb. Now that I've seen what's here and that there were 83 objects found in her coffin, I'm planning to go see if any of those were maybe a binyo, for instance, the hairpin, or perhaps some, in this era, they had started wearing these beautiful brooches that would attach to their hair or their wigs. And they had also started wearing the norige, the pendants. So none of that's on display here, but I'm going to go check and see if any of that found its way to her. But those would have been the main kinds. Oh, and rings. They had jade rings, really giant, thick, chunky jade rings, very fashionable in this era. Yeah, great question, reptiles. This skirt, check out this stunning ceremonial skirt. Can they see the pleating? Maybe from the other backside it might be better.
They might be able to see it from this edge.
So the reason this skirt looks so strange is you have to imagine that this is a wrap skirt. And those long panels will actually be in the back overlapping each other. And so it's going to have this really stunning pleated train in the back. And here we have a depiction of, so you can see the colors more clearly, what they think it looked like. They think it was this beautiful royal blue. And those are actually separate bands of gold brocade that are sewn, appliqued onto the skirt, the fabric, and then everything is pleated together. So this would have been a very stunning piece, and that would have been worn with this amazing Wansam. So imagine all these pieces together as ceremonial clothing. If you consider this the equivalent of the evening gown of the Joseon dynasty, it would have been a very impressive ensemble. And I've noticed some interesting things. I spent a long time staring very closely. Like I'm literally on the ground, almost upside down, trying to look at certain things. Even though this is a very expensive garment, the waistband is cobbled together out of multiple pieces. It's not all just one nice long piece. So again, indicating that late 17th, early 18th century Joseon is not as wealthy as it could be. And the waistband is not lined. The ties are not lined. They're just single layer silk tabby with very perfect, tiny, double folded borders, double hemmed borders, basically. Yeah, it's quite an amazing garment. And this is an era when the skirts were worn like this. They were worn around the waist. They were not worn like they were at the end of the 19th, into the 20th century, up under the armpits or around the chest. They were worn around the waist. So this would have actually been, honestly, a pretty sexy ensemble. If you've got that Wansam, and the Wansam would have been worn over a dogori like this. It would not have just been worn on its own. So the lady would have actually had under this garment called a doksam, which is basically a cotton, rami, or hemp or silk undershirt that is shaped a little bit like that without as much of the details. And then at least one dogori, but possibly several. And then a skirt like that one. And then that skirt. And then this Wansam, and also some other layers that aren't on display here, right? Oh, hey, hey, thank you for joining us today. We are here at Chungbuk University. We were here at Chungbuk University, it's sort of in the center of South Korea, and they've got this amazing special exhibit on the garments found in Lady Tongsong's tomb, Lady Tongsong Shim. A tomb that was excavated horribly in 2003, and in which they found in her coffin with her 83 items. Yeah, so I'm trying to show the world the beauty of historical Korean clothing, what it was like before the modern era, which I think is actually more beautiful than it is now. But I have no opinions on the matter.
Can I taste the paper? Don't understand what you mean, Brent.
I mean, probably.
Oh wow, great outfits. This is a
Yeah, Damien, welcome. Yeah, so for those who don't know, I am actually in the midst of a major research project into historical Korean fabrics. So I've actually already been to 2 different museums where I have examined 16th century garments in person. I've looked at them, I've looked at how they're made, I've turned them inside out, flipped them over. So I'm in the process of recreating 16th and 17th century Korean clothing using original techniques, the way they were actually made, based on my research. And this is a big project with Dr. Minji Kim. Her book is linked under the products, Korea, A Dress History of Korea. It's a great source for those who speak English or read English, even if you don't speak it. So yeah, historical clothing in general is my jam. Right now I'm doing a big focus on Korea. Yep.
He says, you know more about Korea than I do.
I enjoy knowledge, what can I say? So these are just some of the beautiful dogori that were found with Lady Tongsong.
Vic Morrison says hi.
Hello, Morrison?
Morrison.
Vic Morrison. Thank you for joining us today.
They can see me.
Can they see the details on the fabric there?
Not really. I could try and zoom in.
Try.
But
Okay, we're going to try to zoom. Everyone, stick with us. Don't hate us. Did it work?
oh, it's kind of working. Yep.
Okay, so the fabrics on some of these jagari are just absolutely unique. I've looked at hundreds of 16th and 17th century jagari, and this is definitely a different. This tiny little repeating cloud pattern is just so fine, and you can also see that that silk is not heavy at all. So this would have been a good garment for spring or for autumn.
So, as you said, these silk, so are they made of silk?
Yes. Okay. So everything you see here today is made of silk. And it seems to also, if they're lined in silk also. And in some cases, they're padded because the end of the 17th, 18th century in Korea, as in Europe, is the Little Ice Age. Things are very cold, especially in the winter. And so in the winter, they need garments that commensurately protect them from the cold. So for instance, following the padded one. Oh, over here. Yeah. You can see from the three-dimensionality of this garment that it has wadding on the inside. Now I'm going to be looking for the excavation report because the signs here are woefully inadequate for providing any useful information. Yeah, it just says jagori. But it could either be, there were a couple of different kinds of wadding that were used in this era for padding. It could be silk fibers. It could also be cotton fibers. Yeah, those seem to be the two primary ones. Yes. Can I please explain your understanding of the creation of the gold tone fabric textile? Yes, absolutely. Let's go to some of that. Okay, so we've got a couple of different techniques. And again, I'm going to apologize for the way that the gold kumbak or the kumbak is gone. So kumbak is gold stamping, right? And so the way this works is you actually have a wooden stamp and you put adhesive on the pattern on the wooden stamp, and then you stamp the fabric with the adhesive, and then you go over it with gold leaf, and you basically brush the gold leaf onto the adhesive, and then you just brush away the parts of the gold leaf where there is no adhesive, right? That's basic kumbak. And unfortunately, this garment, when it came out of the tomb, we're keeping our eye out to see if we can show you. So I think it's about to come next. When this Wansam came out of her coffin, it looked like it had been gold leafed yesterday. It was so shiny, it was so fresh, because I'm pretty certain they applied the gold leaf to this after she died as part of her funeral. Because the two characters that you see here, the top one is Su, the Chinese character for Su, and the bottom one is Bok, which is Su is longevity, Bok is luck, good luck. And I'm pretty certain those weren't there before. So that is one way. Oh, here you can see the belt. Here's the belt. Here's what it looked like coming out of the tomb. Look at that. Absolutely stunning. Like it was probably made right before she was put in the tomb. Look at, now wait till you see the horrible, and look at, so you see that hyunbae, the patch behind it? That is the patch on that wonsam. Look at how fresh that gold embroidery is. Now let's go look at what it looks like, what it looked like now since they abused it. Since they basically threw this garment onto the forest floor after they pulled it out of her coffin, it now looks like this. Because they exposed it to the oxygen and immediately it started tarnishing because it's not pure gold. It's probably gilt silver, and silver will tarnish, right? So that's another method of applying gold to these garments is embroidery. So embroidery is the technique of putting thread on top of fabric, right? It's using a needle to apply the thread to fabric in a specific pattern. And that specific technique that you see there, that is what's called top side couching. And basically you lay your gold out, first you draw your pattern, you lay your gold on top of it, and you do little stitches over top to hold the gold threads in place in the pattern. And so you can also do it with silk, you can do it with cotton, but the gold work is, when you're working with gold thread, it's all topside couching, or you can do underside couching, but you're not going to do any other stitch with gold thread. You will regret your life choices. So that's another way of getting gold into your fabric. Another technique, maybe if we get the right angle, this band You can see the second band from the cuff. So you've got the broad band and then the first narrow band. That is what's called gold brocade. And in that case, the gold thread is woven into the fabric while it is being woven. So that's a brocading technique where you actually weave the gold thread into it during the weaving process. And those are the three ways of getting fabric to look gold. Gold thread is made by, traditionally anyway, by taking silk thread. So you have silk thread that's spun, and then you actually cut by hand long, narrow bands of gold foil from gold leaf that you've hammered out. And then you take those long, narrow strips of gold and you use a device to wind the gold foil around the silk thread core. It is historically very labor intensive, so gold thread was crazy expensive, not just for the materials, but for the labor it took to make it. How it's made modernly by machine, I don't know. I haven't looked into that. Yeah, great question. Yes, Handsome, you keep looking back there. Was there another question?
No, I was hoping to see if they're
doing the,
that up.
Right, okay. That was,
I think this is it.
okay, here we go. This is the video from the excavation. Okay, so look at how this garment looked fresh out of the tomb, fresh out of her coffin. Look at how amazing that gold is, right? Stunning, right? Perfectly clear, all there. Now look at what it looked like since they dumped it on the ground and exposed it to oxygen and put it in a dumped it in a container, folded on itself. All the gold leaf came off because they literally just pulled everything out of her coffin at the construction site. They weren't, and they were wearing marigolds, as they say in the UK. They were wearing rubber dishwashing gloves. Show us, look at those. You can see the gold leaf all over the gloves that has already started coming off. And they just held the garments up and shook them out like, it was some kind of fast fashion garbage they bought from H&M yesterday. Yeah, every time I see this, I get so angry. Oh, the shoes. Let's talk about shoes. Any comments? Any comments about the?
Looks like love now.
Okay, so these shoes, they are embroidered, right? But these are shoes for the dead. These would not have been worn in life. Shoes like this would not have been worn in life. They've got no hard soles on the bottom. They've got just a layer of silk on the bottom, basically. But they're still beautiful, and they've provided a diagram that shows you the motif of the embroidery.
Okay, forgive me.
Sorry, everyone. We're trying to give you a better view of it.
There you go.
Yes, yeah. And so these shoes were made lovingly just for her to wear in the next life. Aren't they beautiful? I would wear those as slippers. They look super comfy, honestly. And again, all the color leaches out. There's something, I have to find out what it is. No one can tell me. I keep asking experts who should know, but maybe no one has asked this question. What is it about the Korean ground conditions that almost all of the dye stuffs fade to yellow or fade to, this cream, no matter what the original is. It's in an anaerobic environment. It doesn't make sense.
Or brown.
Yeah, it fades to cream or brown.
Like this. Inverted banana says that's the way history crumbles.
Yeah, that is the way history crumbles, literally.
Says we can't control history, we can only learn. And Hai says so true.
Yeah. Yep, also true. Yes, okay, so here are a couple of interesting garments. So down below, we have a beautiful, very heavily padded, but not quilted jogori. Again, the motif, this is a cloud motif, and it's just so much detail in the actual brocade itself. It has silk damask cuffs, which is a real baller move. And it's padded with either silk fibers or could be cotton wool. I don't know, I've got to find the excavation report to see. But one of the big differences between the modern jogori and the original ones is the length of the haute koram. notice those ribbons, the ribbons holding it closed, are serviceably sized, but not really long. Versus, I didn't make this. I commissioned someone else to make this. They didn't make me really what I wanted. But anyway, look at how long these ridiculous things are. How impractical. This gets into food, by the way. But
this one's quilted.
This one is quilted, but not padded. This one is quilted, but not padded. How interesting is that? And so you see all those perfectly straight lines that look like they're machine done? They are not done by machine. That is hand stitching. I did an up close photo. I'll be posting photos, and if you'd like to see the detailed videos with my notes, I'll be posting those as well, although many of them will be just for my patrons and my channel members. But those stitches are 1 millimeter apart. They're tiny.
Dog says mythical YouTube live poll, history rules.
Absolutely, 100%. Another very interesting thing about this, for those of you who do historic clothing construction, if you've ever done any historical Korean clothing construction, the sleeve, can they see there's a seam along the length of the sleeve, in the middle of the sleeve from where a separate band of fabric has been attached to make the sleeve wide enough.
Oh, I think I see it. Okay,
Yeah. So that's not functional,
That part right there.
and I've not really seen that almost ever in other garments. I
there's another seam right there,
think they did it. Yes, you can see all seams in all kinds of places that aren't functional. They're just there to extend the fabric. So this was another way to minimize waste of fabric. Yeah, it's just such a stunning piece. The whole thing is quilted, but no padding. It's almost quilting just as a form of conspicuous consumption, to say I can afford to pay someone to do 3,000 lines of tiny, tiny quilting.
Okay, there it is. Up close of this one.
Of this jogori, they wanted to see the one next to it.
No. Tiny fingers, tiny needles, tiny thread.
Yes, tiny everything. Okay, now. Okay, I'm going to show you two of my, everything is lovely, but this garment we're going to look at is one of my favorite in the collection. This is a Tangi, which we think is from a corruption of dang jogori, eventually getting condensed into the words Tangi. So it literally means like a long jogori. And you can see it's got these sexy curves on the side, and it's open all the way to the armpit. This would be worn over top of a jogori like this one, actually. And it is made of summer weight gauze, silk gauze. Look at how finely woven that is. And I want you all to appreciate that this was hand woven, not machine woven. And woven here in Korea. Korea used to have very sophisticated brocade and silk and damask weaving capabilities. But in the end of the 18th century, the king of Joseon outlawed the weaving of this kind of fabric because he viewed it as decadent and inappropriate for a Neo-Confucian society. And so Joseon started this sharp downward technological plummet from producing a highly tradable fabric, highly desired outside of Korea, to not doing that at all. And the clothing actually reflects that. It gets a lot sadder in the 19th century. Right, so some very interesting things to note about this tangi. At the shoulders, you can see on the inside, extra panels of fabric have been attached because the shoulders are a wear and tear spot. I know this from wearing jogori pretty heavily, that they eventually wear out here. And so they have prevented that by putting patches on the inside so that those patches will wear out. And then they replace the patches instead, right? So very clever. Another interesting, clever thing, the otkoram, the ties. If you look on the one that's on the left as you're looking at it, on the inside, there's a reinforcing patch of fabric as well, so that all that pressure being put on the fabric, that delicate fabric, isn't put on the delicate fabric. It's transmitted to that patch behind it, thereby preserving this garment. And you can tell this garment was worn because there are like some wear spots, but not there. So they did a brilliant job on putting this beautiful thing together. And she was a petite woman. I think she came up to about here. So this would have probably come down to about here on her. But I want you to imagine it's got this sexy curve, right? So it actually kind of follows the waist, and she would have been wearing a skirt like this in the sense of it would have been around her waist, not high up. And then from the sides, it opens up and you would see the more fitted dogori underneath, right? So this would have actually been a pretty nice garment in that regard. This is a summer weight one. Over here, we have the winter weight equivalent. Isn't she stunning? And this exact silk damask is found in that Wansam over there, right? Except that this is newer looking than that. And so I think they used the leftovers from making that Wansam and then made this a little bit later in her life. Now, she died at the age of 36, so her life was not long. Yeah, she was born in 1682 and she died in 1714. So that math doesn't math. 1716? Yeah. Anyway, first quarter of the 18th century. First quarter of the 18th century.
Hai has a good question.
Yes.
Any offline meetings or gatherings to learn more? I'm Korean, but I think I need to learn.
Offline, do you mean like in person? Well, we are currently in Daegu, and I'm always happy to arrange an offline meeting. So if anyone else is in Korea and you would like to have a in-person gathering, drop me a line.
Money River Lapidary says hello.
Money River Lapidary, thank you for joining us today. We are at the stunning silk damask Tangi. Isn't she beautiful? Again, you've got that really, really sexy feminine curve on the front and back. Now this one is lined in a silk tabby and it is bag lined. For those of you who understand what that means, that should be very curious to you because bag lining is something that developed in the West as a result of sewing machines. There were no sewing machines in the Joseon dynasty, so they were actually doing more work than they needed to. Yeah, but again, we've got just such lovely little details here. I don't think you can see, you probably can't really see from your angle, teeny tiny stitches where the geet, the color comes to a,
I'll try it.
there's just teeny tiny stitches that look like on the narrow end of the geet. Tiny stab stitches that look like they were machine sewn, but they just are not. They are hand sewn.
Yeah, I don't think they can see it.
That's okay. I took pictures. I'll be posting pictures.
Dolly says hello.
Hello, Dolly. Thank you for joining us.
Hai says they're in Busan, so not that far.
Oh, sweet. That makes it incredibly possible. My email is thecreativecontessa.com@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, so you can also send me messages there as the Creative Contessa. Okay. So skirts, let's look at skirts. So she had more than, apparently they didn't count the number of skirts. She had so many. I don't know how that works, but because they counted the number of garments, but the signs are a little unclear here. But these are we have two of her skirts in essence. And from what I can tell based on not being able to actually look on the inside, they seem to be constructed in a very, very similar manner. Again, we've got this beautiful silk brocade, or silk damask, sorry, just look down, silk damask. It's knife pleated all in one direction, all in a counterclockwise direction, and it's pleated into a silk tabby band. And that silk tabby band, you probably can't see it, but at the top of the waistband are teeny tiny stab stitches to make the top of that band lie perfectly flat. And again, I thought I was looking at machine stitching and I thought, damn, those conservators, how dare they use a machine on a 300-year-old garment? And then I looked much more closely and the stitches are very, very fine, but just irregular enough to tell me it was not a machine. And it seems to be lined, this again, bag lined in a silk tabby. Yeah, you can see here, come down with me, hunter's crouch. You can do it. You can see some of the bag lining peeking out. And one of the biggest disadvantages of bag lining is that it inevitably stretches below the shell and ends up dragging on the ground and wearing out weirdly. I'd like to get a look at the inside of this skirt because I think I would see some very interesting details. So maybe when they take these out, I can come back and look at them. Obviously, you don't just come and look at them, you have to make an appointment, which I would do. But what's interesting about the band, because of the way they've put it on the form, you can actually see where the skirt fabric ends and the waistband begins. It's very three-dimensional, right? Yeah, you can actually see, and you can also see how it's not exactly perfectly even at the top there. I looked at this closely enough that I'm pretty certain, because you can actually see some of the stitches, the weight of the skirt has pulled it down enough that you can see some of the stitching. And I'm pretty certain that the waistband was attached face to face with the skirt and was backstitched with a running back stitch. And then the band was turned over and it's probably blind stitched in the back over the pleating. I'd have to get a closer look at it. So, and I know if you don't know sewing, that means nothing, and that's okay. Here is our second skirt, a different motif. Again, there is nothing telling us what the colors of these would have been. They would have not all been this strange shade of gold.
It's pretty. I mean,
it's pretty, but they loved bright colors in the Joseon dynasty. They loved purple, they loved green, they loved blue, they loved red, pink. They did wear yellow. Oh yeah, absolutely, lots of yellow.
They don't wear yellow. Doesn't matter.
I don't know. Eventually, the color yellow became the imperial color, but that's the end of the Joseon. That's after the Joseon dynasty, this Korea Empire. Maybe in China, because in China it was the color of the emperor, right? Yeah, right. So yeah, beautiful skirt, and it is entirely possible that they have actually put this at the height where it would have been worn, because in this era, noble women wore skirts that absolutely pulled on the ground. Right? Because you're not supposed to be doing intense activities in these skirts. You're supposed to be placidly meandering about and mostly sitting and doing embroidery or something.
I think it means her waist was only a couple inches below yours.
Why do you think that?
Because I can see your waist.
Oh, no, that's way big. That's way bigger than my waist, handsome.
No, not circumference, height.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, my waist is not that big.
Trust me, I felt your waist. I know it's not.
Okay.
Hitson has a question.
Okay. What's your question?
Is it known what techniques they use to make such straight, tiny, and consistent stitches by hand?
I know I do it by eye. You just develop, so I don't know if they had a special technique, but I am able to do exactly that kind of stitching. You just develop the fine motor skills for it after a while. One of the things you do though to keep your stitches straight is you use chalk or tailor's soap to actually mark the line, and that just brushes away after you're done sewing it. So no doubt they marked their lines. I don't think they just stitched across the fabric praying to God that their stitch would be straight. So the most important thing is to mark your lines when you're sewing by hand. And then you can focus on making your stitches perfectly tiny, because you don't have to worry about keeping them straight because you have a visual guide. But maybe that was the answer you were looking for? Yeah, mark your lines, and then everything else comes with practice. Eventually, nowadays we have stitch spacers, which I only learned about recently. I didn't learn using stitch spacers. I just learned by making ugly stitches until they weren't ugly anymore.
Gangnam Mobile says here.
Gangnam?
Gangnam Mobile.
Gangnam Mobile, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
And Hai says, it also makes me feel a little ashamed of myself because I realized I don't know as much about my own culture as I should.
Look, most people don't know much about their own culture, my friend. Hi, don't worry about it. Most people don't. Yeah. I mean, as long as you're willing to learn. So one of the interesting things about this exhibit is we have all these beautiful 17th and early 18th century clothes. Then in July, they actually have an exhibit that will replace this one to show this designer who has made clothing that takes these lines and these motifs, but modernizes them. I mean, just look at that. Oh, I would wear that every day. Not that, that's terrible. But that's not beautiful. Switch, damn it. That's beautiful. Look at that. That is really lovely. Yeah, that's really nice. I'd wear that. That's lovely.
Guess As we're still watching this.
Anyway, these garments are, oh, that's beautiful. And look, she's actually got a tangi underneath of the jogori. And that actually brings up a good point. These tangi, apparently, in the 16th and 17th century, it was indeed sometimes the fashion to wear this and then wear a jogori like this over top of it. And then you just have that sexy curvature of the bottom of the tangi showing underneath of the more fitted jogori. So that's Minji was telling me that was a fashion actually for a while. Right, so these garments were worn by, and we can tell they were worn because we can see wear and tear. For instance, in the armpits, the most common spot for wear and tear. You can see threads coming loose, how the stitches were worn away basically. So this was a garment that was definitely worn and used in life. It wasn't just made for her funeral, right? And all of these show some kind of level of wear and tear. And they all show different combinations of really fascinating fabrics, many of them like using fabrics from each other. So it's very clear that probably one of the practices was to buy bolts of fabric and then use it over time to make a variety of garments. Yeah. Yes.
Just show these while you read that.
Yep. Oh, hi. Well, you know, thank you, hi. I really appreciate that. So of the last 12 years, we've probably spent 9 of them in Korea, and we kind of view Korea as our second home, and we've learned so much about the history and culture.
I'll show the back of this.
Oh yeah, we can show you the back of this one. Huh. We've learned so much about the history of Korea and its historical culture that we've come to really greatly appreciate it. But we also understand that, like everyone's history, there are downsides and dark sides. So, you know, we appreciate the side of the Wansam, the ceremonial robe. And the glass is reflecting. Maybe if I try to block the light.
Still pretty.
Yeah, and again, this hyunbae, it's not really a rank badge, but that patch in the back, it has the character Su on it in stunning, high quality gold embroidery. Topside couching is the name of that technique. And again, both Dr. Minji Kim and I are both pretty certain that this was added, the patch was added post-mortem, because Su means longevity. So, you know, long life. One of the interesting bits about the Wansam in this era that's very different from the Wansam in later eras, is you have, again, this curve that it just comes in and then curves out at the bottom. And what I think is really interesting about it is that the back is longer than the front, which I always think is a good look. So, you know, you would actually end up, it actually mirrors the front of the ceremonial skirt, right? The ceremonial skirt that would have been worn over top of the other chima under the Wansam, the front is short, it comes to about the ground, and then the back has a train. So you'd have that mirrored in the Wansam, where the front is shorter than the back. It just would have been a very stunning combination. I'm gonna make myself one now. It's happening. This is happening, folks.
I may be butchering this. Just like Hatal Gadun. Dang it, I'm butchering it, I know I am. Said hi.
Hold it still. Hesa means sun, sunshine.
Hesa.
Yeah, means sunshine.
Oh, that's right, it fits.
Yeah, Hesa. Yeah. Well, everyone, were there any garments you wanted to look at again? We've reached the end of the exhibit, which honestly, this is the most historical Korean clothing I've seen since the shoe exhibit at Daegu National Museum 2 years ago. Otherwise, most Korean museums don't have their historical garments out on display like this. They're in the archives where no one gets to see them. How great is that? So I think we'll just finish up then in front of the Wansam with which we started. This other Wansam, beautiful, beautiful garment. And if any of you have questions and we didn't answer them, if you're watching this as a recording, you can pop them in the comments. If you've been watching and you're enjoying, please double tap that screen to like and consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell, because otherwise YouTube will never tell you when we go live, which we do. regularly and irregularly. And I'd like to thank my patrons and my channel members for supporting my work. And I will be posting videos just for my patrons and channel members where I go into much more detail about the construction of these garments. And you probably thought I went into detail here. Oh, no, no, no. No, no, no. The videos I took, went into much more construction details. Yeah, we've been here for 4 hours now, and I've been looking just at these garments. So any final questions, anyone?
Nope, lots of thank yous.
Well, thank you all so very much. Tomorrow, we will be live streaming from Dankook University Museum, which has an even bigger collection on display, I've been told. So they also have 16th century garments. So we'll be talking about a broader range of Korean history fashion tomorrow. So stay tuned for more of this tomorrow, everyone. Okay, and I think tonight, actually, possibly from the Travels with, I have a travel channel also, in case you all don't know, Travels with the Creative Contessa. We will be live streaming from Suwon. We're going to go to some of the historic parts. Hopefully it will be bright enough, even though it's nighttime, to show you the historic palace and the walls from the 18th century era of Suwon. Okay, everyone, otherwise until next time, stay creative. Bye, everyone.
And we're closing.